Welcome to Spiritual Psychology. My name's Renee LaValle McKenna, and I bring my 30-plus years as a recovering addict and ex-crazy person turned therapist and shamanic healer to bring you snackable teachings on spirituality, psychology, and all things personal growth. And today I want to talk about regret, particularly releasing regret and the possibility of living a life with no regret. And regret is when we feel sad, repentant, or disappointed over something that has happened, and especially a lost or missed opportunity. So from this perspective, there are two kinds of regret. One is for the things that we have done, and the other is for the things that we have not done. And feelings are always information, and if we look deeply into our feelings, they will often hold the keys to our freedom and the map to our own fulfillment. And if we look squarely at either type of regret for things undone or things that have already happened, it calls us into what we can do right now. Because regret is almost always about the past. And although we cannot change the past, we can and absolutely should continue to evolve our relationship and perspective on the past as we grow and hopefully mature. And our regrets for the past, if they continue to cause us suffering, absolutely should be addressed so that we can have peace and come to presence in our lives today. So I'm going to talk first about regrets for things that we have done or that have happened. And one of the most toxic kind of regrets is shame, guilt, or remorse for our own bad behavior. On the metaphysical level, we are all connected. And when we hurt, injure, or harm another person, it bothers us on a soul level. We can push it down, justify it, medicate it, but deep down we know we have been wrong, and it will eat at us like a parasite. And generally, like a parasite, it won't go away on its own. It needs to be treated and removed. Guilt and shame are tremendously low resonances, which means they really pull us down. The need to repent or be forgiven for the wrongs we have done or the harms we have caused has been recognized throughout history. Yom Kippur in Judaism, the Day of Atonement, is held as the holiest day of the year, a time of fasting, confession, prayer, restitution. The sacrament of confession in the Catholic Church, also known as penance or reconciliation for the confession and forgiveness of sins. The sweat lodge in the native traditions often includes an offering, a releasing, a confessing into the earth, into the fire of regrets, sorrows, harms that need amended. I had an opportunity to do a sweat with the Dene people, known by their Western name of the Navajo. And we spent the day with the family of the spiritual leader of the Dene in that region of southern Utah in Monument Valley. Absolutely stunning place. Nice little house, no running water, no electricity. And they build a sweat for the women and a sweat for the men on the other side of the house. They start the fire in the morning, stack big rocks into it. And they keep the fire blazing. The rocks get incredibly hot. And after hours and hours, when the rocks are hot enough, they cover them up and they build a little tent around it with poles and tarps and blankets. And it's completely dark, and you crawl inside, and there are songs and ritual, and participants speak their feelings into the darkness, into the fire. And in this tradition, we would come out and cool off and have some drinks and fruit. Then we'd go back in again, in and out, releasing toxins from our body through the sweat. Some people expressing really deep feelings and grief, anger, and prayers for hopes, peace, empowerment. And when we were done, we had a big meal. I got to go to the reservation store with the pregnant daughter of the holy man, and we cooked together. And they told me that sometimes they do this every week or whenever it's needed. And I thought, what a tremendously healthy practice to be able to acknowledge and clear the difficulties and dissonances, our suffering on a regular basis in this really safe, communal, supported space where everybody's doing the same thing. Fabulous practice. And most of us don't have that opportunity or even know it's a possibility in ordinary American culture. We accumulate and collect all this toxic gunk. It's like getting constipated or having a bowel obstruction emotionally, spiritually, energetically. And it is so valuable to move that shit along. And it takes some time and energy, but it is so worth it. 2 of the most powerful steps in the 12 steps are steps 8 and 9, where we become willing to make amends to everyone we have harmed, and then we make direct restitution or amends wherever possible, unless it would cause more harm. And when I started my spiritual path, I was riddled with guilt and shame, and a lot of it was justified. And I was encouraged to go back thoroughly over my life and to look where I had caused harm and to go back to those people intentionally, in person, wherever possible, and to simply say, I apologize if my behavior harmed you, and I don't act like that anymore. To pay them back if I owed them money, or to tell them the truth if I had lied and manipulated them. And that process, more than anything else, returned me to myself and set me free from regret. And some of those experiences were transformative for the people who received my amend to them because of the courage, the humility, and the goodwill with which I was approaching them. Totally transformed and elevated what had been a toxic dynamic into one that was almost sacred more than once. I can't tell you what happened every time. But honestly, taking responsibility for ourselves and cleaning off our side of the street is like a big old laxative, and it feels really good when you're done. And one of the things that process taught me was appropriate self-responsibility. And I needed a lot of help from therapists and advisors and friends to sort through what really was my responsibility and what wasn't. Because I tend to be over-responsible or under-responsible. That, for example, I had tremendous guilt about the suffering that I caused my first boyfriend by breaking up with him. In fact, I stayed in that relationship ages longer than I should have because I knew it would hurt him if I left, which is a terrible reason to stay in a relationship. And at that point, I believed that his feelings were more important than mine. And how dysfunctional is that? And I came to understand that what's true for me may not align with what other people want. But that doesn't mean I'm harming them. If people have feelings about what I'm doing, that's their responsibility to manage. My job is to be my best self in the world. Now, how I tell my truth, when I tell my truth, where I tell my truth, those are all things I have control over. I can rage at someone and throw dishes and say, "You don't care about what I feel." And maybe they don't care about how I feel, but then I'm the bad, crazy person for throwing the plates. Very different than if we sit down over coffee and I say, my needs aren't being met here. And I feel deprived, depleted, sad, and angry about the dynamic between us. Really different outcome. Now, that might get the other person throwing plates, but that's not my responsibility. So difficult feelings almost always call for some kind of change, whether that change is internal or external. And amending the harms we have done is an external action that absolutely changes us internally. But releasing some kinds of regret requires internal shifting first. I guess they all do, because before we can rectify the past through confession or restitution, we need to know what it is we're confessing and really own responsibility for that. And that is a tremendously character-building process. But another major kind of regret is a regret for things that have happened, particularly loss and death and missed opportunities, or the perception of missed opportunities, which requires us to release our ideas of how we think things should be or should have been. To acknowledge that we are not in control. And that can be terrifying and rage-inducing, but facing those fears and moving through that anger will transform us and allow us to be more accepting and more present and able to take constructive, productive action in our lives today. When we're stuck in the past and regret, We can't do that. Depletes us, makes us hopeless, bitter, constricted. I've worked with many people who have frozen grief. It's very common. Grief is very complex, and it has its own process, but sometimes time alone will not move things. The death and loss often unexpectedly change the course of people's lives, and without some extra help, that wound might remain unhealed, and all wounds deserve to heal. And one of the most powerful examples of this was Wayne Dyer on the Oprah Winfrey Show talking to a young couple who had lost one of their twin boys. I don't remember how he died, but they were very young, the twins. I think he died when he was 2 or 3, and the other one was 5 now, and the parents were unable to get over their grief. And Dr. Dyer offered one of the most profound and courageous interventions that I have ever heard. And he said to this couple, "I am so sorry that your son died. That is a terrible loss. But there are no guarantees in this life, and you need to be grateful for the time that you had with him, because that is all there is. And this is what is real. And you have a living, remaining son who deserves to live his life with his parents' full love and attention without the shadow of regret hanging over him for the rest of his life. That when he has his first day at school, that you will cry and think his brother should have been here with him. And when he hits his first home run in Little League, we will wonder if his brother would have hit a home run as well. And when he graduates high school, it will be sad because his twin was not with him graduating too. There will be only one wedding. Oh, so many regrets for the unlived life of the dead child. And his living twin when he has grandchildren. The sadness for the cousins that never were. And on and on. In what are really fantasies and projections, understandable as they are, that cast a dark and cold shadow over the living. And he instructed this couple to release their regret and accept the loss and be glad for the time that they had, because that is all we have here, and it is short. And regret in this way, the idea of missed opportunities, is a sacrilege. It's a turning away from what is and living deeply the life that we have. And that young couple and most of the audience was in tears, and they thanked him for his wisdom and that deep truth. And I have a little agreement with myself as best I can to live a life of no regret. That when I'm on my deathbed, I want to give myself a thumbs up on the way out. Know I did the best I could. And I often think about my life from that perspective. How will I feel if I don't do this? Particularly with things that are hard. That's how I wrote my book. I had no idea if 10 people would read it or 10,000, and it had to not matter. But I knew that if I didn't do it, I would have regret for the thing that was undone. And there may be a few things we age out of, but there's not many. I'm starting my career in my late 50s in many ways, and I expect 60 to 85 to be my most productive years. So if you think it's too late, you're full of crap. And you don't get to use that as an excuse with me. It's never too late to pursue our dreams, our goals, and to fulfill what we feel is our purpose here. And regret can be like a drain on our life energy that sucks away our ability to do the things we really want to do. To take the constructive, productive action in present time. So I encourage you to release the false narratives, the fantasies of how things should have been, could have been, the missed opportunities. Take the opportunity right now. Do the scary thing. Take the risk. And step out of those shadows into the sunlight of your own authentic self. And the universe will rise to meet you. Thank you so much for listening. I've started to teach and upload free offerings on Insight Timer, which is an awesome app if you don't know it. If you're on Insight Timer, please follow me. Once I get to 100 followers, I can offer free courses. I'll put a link to my Insight Timer page in the show notes. Starting the first series of spiritual experience groups. This week, they're going really well. Small 1-hour virtual groups of 4 to 6 people under my spiritual direction, doing inner journey work, sharing and supporting each other for blocks of 6 weeks. I'll be starting another round of those groups in late April. If you're interested, shoot me an email, info@reneemckenna.com. You can also find out more about that on my website. And if you're interested to find out how spiritual psychology might benefit you or learn more about my mentorship program, you can email or DM me on Instagram @ReneeLaValleyMcKenna. Thanks as always to my generous supporters on Patreon. And I'd love it if you'd leave me some stars on Spotify or a review on iTunes. I really value your feedback. Sometimes I think, am I just crazy over here talking to myself? And I'm always open to your ideas for topics you want to hear about. Blessings on your path until we meet again. This is Renee LaValley McKenna for Spiritual Psychology.